Right, guys, welcome to the Lean Lifestyle. My name is Ricky Brody. Today I'm going to be talking about why you shouldn't be cutting out carbs from the start of your journey. I know this is very common because a lot of people I've spoken to, clients I've worked with, they've tried different approaches. And more often than not, first thing they do is just eliminate carbohydrates. I understand why, because obviously it is a macronutrient that most people tend to use to manipulate most of the time. And obviously there's a lot of information out there. I'm hoping to clear this up a little bit, give you a bit of an insight to why cutting carbohydrates probably isn't the best option. It's not to say you shouldn't limit them or control them, but cutting them out is not always the best approach. First off, don't need to cut carbohydrates to lose weight. Most people know this, but a lot of people don't. And that is exactly why I'm putting this out. Although when it comes to cutting out a macronutrient, carbohydrates do tend to be the first one that people drop or they eliminate. And I understand why. If you've got, a decent amount of fats and your protein is high, then carbohydrates are really the one you want to move around. So I tend to aim for around 15 to 20% of my overall calorie intake from fats. And then I get protein, which is usually, for me, I aim for around 180 grams. So what I do is I go like 1 gram per pound of body weight, and then I just add like 20 to 30 grams to that. So I sit at around 155. So I go for about 180. So carbohydrates are the body's main energy source. The reason for this is it's broken down into glucose, which is the body's most readily available energy source. Without getting into it too much, using carbohydrates as energy is just a lot easier. The process is a lot easier than using fat or protein as fuel. So carbohydrates are very easy to use as fuel, very fast digesting, quickly absorbed and readily available in comparison to something like fat or protein. Now, this doesn't mean that it's not possible to use fats as fuel or protein as fuel, but it really does depend on how efficient your body is at doing this. And for most people at the start of their journey or going through this process, their body isn't really very efficient and it does struggle to use things like fat and protein as fuel. That's not to say it's not possible, but going through the process, like, people talk about the keto diet, but it's very difficult and it's not something that your body can just adapt to straight away. This is called metabolic flexibility. And basically what this means is your body's ability to go between using fat and carbs as fuel. Protein, like I say, is part of this, but the process of breaking down protein as fuel is not as efficient and certainly not something you want to rely on. So it is possible, like if you do have a very high protein diet, if you just have protein, it's not going to work. You can actually fall into the malnutrition side of things where you're not actually getting enough fuel. So having fats or carbs present is very, very important. Like I say, carbohydrates are the main energy source. So using carbohydrates is a better option for majority of people, depending on where you're at. Like someone who is very healthy, very used to doing this, is used to going through like an elimination diet approach, can obviously work quite well on low carbs and high fat. Personally, I cycle this. So certain days I will be high fat, low carb, high protein, and I function quite well on it, but I can't do it every single day. And it does have an impact on my training performance. Like I say, this can also be improved depending on your diet approach and how long you've been doing it for. So for most people at the start of the journey, it is ideal to have a very balanced diet rather than the elimination diet. Although the elimination diet does benefit you in the sense of what you're eating, because you kind of, whenever you go, say for example, you go to a petrol station, you're very limited to what you can have. And if you're going to grab a snack or something, it kind of restricts you within that kind of place. And for a lot of people, that does help. But you have to understand that it's not always the best way to do things. So cutting out carbohydrates will most likely lead to you feeling quite tired and lethargic. And a lot of people go through this. So at the start of the journey, very energetic, new program, want to get involved, start to see results because they've reduced their carbohydrate intake, their calories are very low, and they do tend to get that buzz. But what you need to understand is when you start to become lethargic, this starts to affect other parts of it. Meaning, as an example, your NEAT, which is your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, meaning the amount of calories that you burn at sort of like rest or not doing anything. You're like just moving your hands around and things like that. This massively goes down. This goes down as you get leaner anyway. Like if you're getting to the low percent body fat, you start to notice that these things get impacted. A prime example is when I was competing and I got very, very low percent body fat. When I train, I usually get up and move around, and that's quite common for me to do. And I'm very conscious of that because I get up, I do a set. I don't like sitting down on the bench whilst I'm waiting to do my next set. I sort of get up, move around a little bit. As I was getting leaner and getting closer, I just stopped doing it, and it just clicks. And I was like, wow, like this is an actual thing, because without even realizing, I stopped getting up and moving around. And that's the sort of impact it can have, even if it comes, throughout everyday life, like little things you just don't do the same sort of stuff. Your BMR, your basal metabolic rate, and your NEAT are such a big component to your calorie expenditure in comparison to your exercise. So your exercise is a very small percentage of your actual calorie burn. And if you're not eating enough carbohydrates, you do tend to notice this. This isn't for everyone, but this is for people who do tend to start their journey. Keeping a moderate amount of carbohydrates in helps them feel more energetic, they actually move more, and they want to do more, especially things like going to the gym, doing their cardio, and just doing things throughout day-to-day life that they don't even realize actually leads to more expenditure. Now, if you are able to push past this, you can still push past it in the past, and it is good because you can start to see results faster, but you do notice performance benefits get lost when compared to when you're having carbohydrates. So when you're training, you can't necessarily train as hard, you can't do as many sets, and also you don't tend to want to train as much. Like, you can get quite lethargic going into a session. Most people will experience this when they're on a low carb diet, that they don't get up for their workouts as much. You might do through the initial process, the start of the journey, but as time goes on, you become more lethargic. You don't want to do your cardio, you don't want to do your workouts, and this is something, like I say, that can have a massive impact on your actual output and just health in general. So it's really important to understand that these factors cross over. So yeah, you might be losing weight, but how is your mood? How is your energy? How is your training performance? How is your general day-to-day life, or your energy to do things tends to get affected by it? And this is where it really impacts you, is what happens when you stall? What happens when you stop losing body weight? Because you've lost all of the water weight, because you've reduced your carbohydrate intake, but yet you kind of want to push past and you want to go further. Now, because you've restricted yourself so much, it's quite likely that you're going to struggle to push more. Doing an extra workout a week, say you're doing 3 to 4 sessions a week and you want to bump it up to 5 or 6, or doing more cardio, all these factors get restricted because of the fact that you don't have the carbohydrates there. Unless you are very well fat adapted, you will struggle to do this, and you will struggle to perform well, or at least be consistent with your training or push even further. So when you stall, it's quite likely that you're going to come to a point where you can't actually do any more physically. And this isn't a mind over matter thing. Like, for majority of people, this isn't life or death. It's not their work, not their business, not their life. It's just the fact they want to achieve their results. And if you're one of them people, taking this route can massively impact the likelihood of you actually achieving what you want to achieve. Now, for a lot of people, the question comes, well, what if I reduce my carbs but increase my fat so that the calories are matched? You will see an initial weight loss if you take this approach. It is quite likely that you can still achieve your goals, but there are a few things that you need to consider. A big reason why I recommend carbohydrates over fats is because carbohydrates are 1 gram is 4 calories, fats are 1 gram is 9 calories. Now, if you don't have a balanced diet and you're going through this elimination process where you're low carb and you're focusing on fats, if you was to overeat fats, you can massively, like for volume side of things, so that you're full, it's very likely that your calories are going to massively exceed what they are at the moment. Whereas with carbohydrates, if you overeat and you overeat the right sort of stuff that is just from carbohydrates alone, just due to the general food volume, it's very unlikely that you're going to massively go over. And a prime example of this is something like potatoes. So potatoes, for around 250 grams of potatoes, you're getting around 200 calories. It's quite a lot of potato. Whereas if you was to have like 35 grams of peanut butter, for example, still the same amount of calories, but the volume is a lot less. So if you're focusing on fats and you're having things like peanut butter, avocado, these sort of things, nuts, any type of nuts or anything like that, oils, they're calorie dense and they're not very voluminous. So this can mean that if you overconsume them, you're likely to go over your calories. So you have to be very, very accurate. Whereas with something like potato, if you do end up having an extra 100 grams, 200 grams potato, you're only going to be going over by like 200 calories. Whereas if you was to have, a bigger teaspoon of peanut butter, you can accumulate 100 calories really easily through this. Or if you was to have an extra handful of nuts, that's another 100 calories. It's so easy to consume higher amounts of calories through fats than what it is through carbohydrates. But, main factor is obviously a calorie deficit. So being in a calorie deficit is the main thing. It doesn't matter what approach you take, as long as you're in a calorie deficit, it's very likely that you're going to lose body weight or body fat. But it's really important to understand there are other aspects to this as well: hunger, energy, willpower, training performance, consistency. All of these variables get affected by pretty much how your diet is. So it's much better to have a balanced approach to your diet, meaning that you have enough fats for the health benefits you get, and they are quite satiating, the right amount of carbohydrates, that you've got enough energy for your sessions and you're eating enough food, and then protein to make sure that you're once again getting the health benefits, but also recovering well and getting enough protein to actually recover from your training and make sure that you're building muscle and you're recovering and you're actually getting what you need from your diet. But also protein can be quite satiating, and like I say, it's also 4 calories per gram. So if you had 10 grams of carbs and 10 grams of protein, that is still less calories. So you had 10 grams both together is still less calories than 10 grams of fat. So this can allow you to eat more food whilst getting leaner if it was all equal. So having a good balance of your calories, a good amount of carbohydrates, decent amount of fats and protein, means that you're going to be more likely to not just drop body fat, but also build muscle, maintain muscle, and get into better shape. You don't want to be one of these people that completely restrict everything, start to lose weight, start to lose focus, and don't enjoy it. Whereas if you have a balanced diet, you can sustain it over a longer period of time and you can slowly drop off weight. I've helped guys get from 250 pounds to 200 pounds to 180 pounds whilst not actually manipulating much within their diet. They've just stayed extremely consistent because they're getting enough food to fuel their workouts, to fuel their day, they're enjoying their food, don't feel restricted, which means that in the long run, they're actually going to achieve more and they're actually going to go far past their results and also maintain it as well. The biggest thing I've noticed within clients when they've got a balanced diet approach is that they not only get there, but they're able to maintain it, and the likelihood of them gaining 50 pounds is very minimal. But yeah, I've seen a lot of people that go through these restrictive diets where they are solely focusing on just cutting out carbs and doing loads of cardio and stuff. They lose all the weight and then they tend to put it back on. So be very aware of this because it can massively impact your ability to not just achieve your results, but also maintain them. So using carbohydrates as fuel is one of the biggest parts of it. Understanding that side of things, that carbohydrates are your best option when it comes to fuel. People may argue it, that's fine. I don't care. Everyone's got their opinion. I personally, my experience, my client's experience, I don't care what anyone says. This is what I'm putting out. My experience with myself and my clients is that having a higher carb diet tends to lead to long lasting and better results, more food options, more control over their calories, more energy, better willpower, feeling more full in general. So there are a lot of benefits to it, and that's not to completely write off high fat diets because they do have their place and some people work really well on them, but they tend to be people that are already lean and that are already got all the habits and stuff in place and they're just enjoying trying something different. Very rarely do I see someone who has come from 250 pounds down to 180, kept himself in shape, stayed there and been able to consistently stick to it. If your goal is to get into shape, build muscle, drop body fat and have a nice balanced lifestyle, having a balanced diet is a key component to this. So do not eliminate carbohydrates. I've had guys eating 250 grams of carbs a day and have no issue dropping weight. They are able to sustain this whilst progressing and continuing on with their journey, and that is the biggest factor. No one wants to just get there and just lose it all. Now, there is a time and a place for doing this. Once your body's in a good place, you're lean and your body's adjusted and you kind of got important habits and routines in place, that can give you the chance to then start manipulating things. Carbohydrates are usually macronutrient that gets manipulated. That's absolutely fine. But what you don't want to do is solely rely on manipulating this one nutrient at the start of your journey. What you want to be doing is having a balanced diet, and this will then lead to you achieving long-lasting results. It's so important to understand that when it comes to getting results, consistency is key. If you can stick to a program consistently, you will get better results. The issue comes when you go from not having any routine to then eliminating carbohydrates. You become tired, you become moody, you don't want to go to the gym, you don't want to move. And all of this just stems from the fact that you've not made the conscious effort to create some sort of balanced approach that would allow you to stick to it. So many people go down that route, and it's not that it doesn't work, it's not that it can't work, it's that for majority of people it's probably not going to work. So don't just cut out carbohydrates, understand this side of things. Really important to get a better understanding of what you're doing so that you can then know when's the right time to do certain things, and also consider the impact it's going to have on other aspects of your life. I hope this helps. If you've got any questions or anything, drop me a message. Take care.